Okay, next, another conceptual discussion. This is a possible McDonald's restaurant. MUC Sub-District Conditional Use Permit Requirements, Tax Map 15, Lot 60-2. And I think this is next to,
Bless you.
isn't it?
Thank you.
Dunkin' Donuts, isn't it? On,
Vista Ridge.
okay, Vista Ridge.
Near there.
Okay, I gotta go, that's my location here.
Same side of the street as the subway.
It's right across from the bus terminal.
Oh,
It's right across
boy,
from-
This is
that's,
the corner of Vista Ridge and
what a spot.
Everybody can run across and get their coffee and dodge the traffic.
this would be in front of the
And you're right.
retail and restaurant proposal that you saw a few months ago from
Oh.
Social Partners.
Yes.
So, Tim, has that gone anywhere, that, was
They're
that,
working. We've had a traffic scoping meeting, and they're developing plans at this point.
so you're talking now a very nice restaurant, and then we're talking McDonald's?
I have no idea about any tenants at this point.
Potential, that's why it's,
No, I know, it's a
Yeah.
conceptual discussion.
yeah.
That's all this is, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for the record, my name is Frank Montero. I'm a site engineer with MHF Design in Salem, New Hampshire. Here tonight representing two parties, the landowner who's in the audience, Dave Sanderson, he's the trustee of Londonderry GC Realty Trust, and with me to my right is Tessa Bernstein. She's a construction manager with McDonald's. The plan up on the board, as mentioned, the site is off exit 5 at the corner of Rockingham Road and Vista Ridge Road, or Vista Ridge Drive. Mr. Sanderson's owned this property for several years, and back in 2006, September of 6, the DOT made a taking on the front of the property to widen Route 28. And just to give you an idea of the width of the taking, doesn't show up well on that slide there. What I did is I colored the former lot line in the front of the property in pink here, so you get an idea. It was about a .33 acre taking, varied in width from 70 to 50 feet at the closest point. It's known as map 15, lot 60-2. It's just over an acre in size after the taking. It's been rezoned to mixed-use commercial. The taking, as I mentioned, created a severe hardship on the potential development on this parcel. Mr. Sanderson's had a few developers look at the piece in the past, talked to a few bank-type users, gas station users, and quick service restaurants, and it just seems to be too small to fit everything that's been requested by the potential tenants. Furthermore, there's about a 10-foot grade difference between the front of the site and the rear of the parcel. The rear of the parcel is about 10 feet higher than the road, which further restricts how the site lays out horizontally. Based on the mixed-use district, this proposed footprint or layout that you're seeing here for a quick-service restaurant, we believe would need 3 conditional use permits. One for the fast food use itself, the second for the drive-through window, and then under this layout, we'd have some dimensional relief required for buffers and setbacks that I'll go through. First off, this footprint is the smallest footprint that McDonald's has. In the portfolio, it's about 3,300 square feet with 50 seats. And the restriction on the development with the taking is the front property lines are kind of skewed to the rear property line, so it's difficult to get a nice symmetrical layout on these on this parcel. But what we did on this is we held the rear lot line in terms of the 15-foot green setback to parking. And what that created was a restriction in the front for the parking that's angled along 28. We end up with about, let's see, it's about 15 feet of green space to the lot line, and at one point 9 feet in another. And that's to the angled property line. If you actually look at the drawing, we have more green space to the actual edge of the road. We'd end up with about 25 feet at the closest point to the road, and over 30 feet on the other corner of the parking spaces. A small portion of the building corner near the drive-through window is also in the building setback. 60 feet is required, and this layout is showing 53 feet is proposed at that corner. The total open space on the lot is met. We need 33% per zoning. This layout has about 38% open space. We believe the internal green space is met, 10% of the parking lot. We have about 14%. The key thing in my mind is the drive-through queue works very well on this layout. We have more than the 10 vehicles stacked that the town typically looks for these developments. Proposing 2 curb cuts. The driveways, they're both 35 feet wide along the lot line to facilitate tractor-trailer access for deliveries. The driveway off of 28 is a right-in, right-out only with the median that exists out in 28. And a proposed drive on Vista Ridge is a full-access driveway. Some additional constraints with the topography of the land, or the natural composite of the land, is a wetland ditch that runs diagonally through the property that's been delineated by Mark West. Any development on this lot would require filling of that wetland area. It is less than a half acre, so it doesn't fall under the town's conservation overlay district. And it's about 5,100 square feet if we were to fill that swale. And it runs down to a culvert that goes under Vista Ridge Drive. Adjacent to the development to the left on the abutters property, there is a larger wetland that exceeds a half acre, and you can just see the edge of the 50-foot buffer to the left there. So we would comply with that buffer requirement with this layout. We would expect to provide above-ground detention at the corner of the development to the right of the parking spaces along Vista Ridge Drive. We have land area available there, and we also have an area directly in front of the building adjacent to 28. That's a basic overview of what we're proposing. We're obviously here for conceptual discussion to get input from the board and get some initial feedback.
Okay, thank you. I'll start. Andre?
I just had a few comments. One, with regard to the functional use of the property, the curb cut off of Route 28 is something that I think we should give strong consideration to. Much like Solvin Realty, if it's on the corner of Perkins Road and Route 28, the access is off of Perkins Road. The construction company across the street is off of Sims Drive. I think we should make every attempt to make sure that the access point is limited to off of Vista Ridge Drive. The main purpose of Route 28 is our minor arterial, is to get you from point A to point B. The more curb cuts you get on there, the more difficult you'll have to get from point A to point B. So that is one of the concerns I would have. And two, I know that when we went through the small area master plan, one of the things that we were trying to, the concept that we're trying to advance is that of a pedestrian-friendly type of concept, and that's why we put the mixed-use development together. And at least the plan I see before me doesn't have too many of those pedestrian type of facilities there to encourage people to walk and not always have to use your car. There is a residential entity behind there, as well as up the street, up Perkins Drive. But the way this is laid out is purely dependent on the automobile. But those are just a couple of observations I had and seeing this for the first time.
Okay, thanks.
Tim and I had met with Frank and the applicant, as well as a McDonald's rep, and Frank, I appreciate you addressing the drainage out there. Again, we had some discussion regarding that. My only other observation would be the entrance off of Vista Ridge Drive, and again, just knowing what the queue, looking at what the queue is gonna be from people coming down Vista Ridge with that light on at that intersection of Vista Ridge and Sims. We'll have to take a look at that and just make sure we don't have any conflicts with that. That's all I have for now.
Okay, thanks. Tim?
A couple of things I think that I would like to hear from the board tonight, and I know the applicant would as well. As Frank mentioned, the use of fast food restaurant is not a permitted use within this district. It is only permitted by conditional use permit. There are 4 conditional use permit criteria for the use. Those are that it's a use consistent with the vision and statements and recommendations of the Northwest Small Area Master Plan or the most recently adopted Town Master Plan, that granting the application is in the public interest, that the property in question is reasonably suited for the use, and the fourth, and the one I think is probably the most problematic for this particular use, is that the design of the site represents, to the extent practicable, a minimization of impacts to natural resources and maximizes provision of green space and accommodation of non-vehicular and pedestrian traffic. Those are the 4 criteria the planning board will have to determine are met in order to allow this use to take place on the site. The issues related to the dimensional deficiencies with the green area setback and the building setback, this section of our ordinance does allow the planning board to grant conditional use permits to reduce and modify dimensional requirements. The 2 additional criteria that would need to be met, in addition to the 4 I've already mentioned, is that the applicant has demonstrated the alternative design for which the conditional use permit is sought is not feasible without relief from the strict terms of the ordinance, while not diminishing surrounding property values or the ability of nearby parcels to develop in accordance with their zoning district. And secondly, that the application demonstrates the alternative design does not impact general health, safety, and welfare of the town, and is otherwise in compliance with all requirements of the zoning ordinance, site plan regulations, subdivision regulations, as applicable to the proposed project. Those are the criteria the board would have to make. If the board finds that those aren't met, this site would then require additional variances from the zoning board of adjustment. But I think the primary concern that staff has with this particular proposal is the use itself and whether or not